Hi, my name is Judie Vankooiman, and you're watching Life Issues. This month's show is Breaking the Silence, addressing social isolation and loneliness. My guest is Meredith Hurley. Welcome.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. Meredith, I'm going to start by asking you, what is your professional background?
So I am currently the Director of Public Health for the town of Winthrop. I have been in this role since 2019. I took over as the director in October of 2019. Previous to that, I worked as the nurse at Winthrop High School, and then and prior to that, I was the public health nurse for the community beginning in 2014. Before coming over to public health, I worked as an inpatient nurse at Boston Children's on the neuroscience unit for about 12 years. So that's my background.
All right, that's a lot. And what are some key strategies from that about this topic?
Oh, social isolation and loneliness have definitely become more to the forefront of our media and our awareness. So last year, I believe it was last year, the Surgeon General declared that loneliness has definitely impacted health in multiple different forms. So your social, emotional, and mental health, when folks are feeling lonely and isolated, we'll see a higher risk for depression, a higher risk for anxiety, and also physically, we've also noted with recent research that there is impacts to your cardiac health, there's impacts to your physical health, and so it's great that we have this opportunity to start to talk about it a little bit, especially after we spent so many months a year and a half really in isolation during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think it's important to highlight, especially now that we don't have the restrictions and the burden of COVID-19 is definitely decreased, that we can talk about what these impacts are, ways to connect in a world that seems very connected, but truthfully really isn't. And this being January, almost February, folks have an even harder time getting out and ending their isolation, whether it's because of the weather, the cold, difficulties traveling, things like that. So we really want to highlight the notion that staying connected to even one or two people really helps not just our physical health, but our mental health.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And what are some challenges to consider?
So we think of the challenges as either functional. So if somebody is experiencing a barrier to leaving their home or getting out and connecting with people, either because they have some sort of physical ailment, if they don't have access to transportation, if the weather is kind of keeping folks homebound. And then we also think about, folks that are in the cycle of loneliness. It kind of perpetuates, and loneliness can be very complex in that it can be the symptom to anxiety and depression, or it can be the result of anxiety and depression, or it can be a complexity of all of it, where you really don't know which one came first. Was it the depression, the anxiety that created loneliness, or was it the loneliness that? And so there's different avenues to kind of navigate that. And also for some people, they don't have technology access to maybe connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And how does someone overcome disconnection?
So I read that loneliness is not always about the amount of people that you have around you. You can be a very social human being, but feel lonely and isolated if you don't feel like you're connecting with other people, you don't feel like you're being seen, or that your opinions matter, or that you are kind of part of a community. And community does not necessarily mean the larger community, like you don't have to know 20 people, within the town of Winthrop to consider yourself not being lonely. Like it can be that within your house of worship, within your church, within a coffee shop, right? Like, I mean, I love walking into some of the coffee shops in town and seeing the same kind of group of folks that seem like they meet there, either every day or, certain days of the week. So they're building a small community. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people. It can just be, a few people. It could be people at your workplace. It can be, your neighbors, in your, either where you live or, if you're living in a housing, in a congregate, in a multi-unit house. It can be anything like that. Any place that you can kind of facilitate connection is the best way to do that. And for some folks, they find connection on social media. Some people, even though we are more connected now than ever, we're a much more connected society, we're seeing many more people identify that they are lonely. And so it kind of, just because you're connecting with folks on social media does not necessarily mean that you're connecting emotionally and socially with them.
Yeah. And what is the strongest human connection?
Feeling that you're understood, and that you have a similar either values or morals or things like that with another person. I think is a really good indicator of finding that cohesion that we as human beings kind of look for.
Right. And Meredith, does mental illness affect this?
Oh, absolutely. As I was saying before, folks that are experiencing depression and anxiety, and we talk about seasonal depression this time of year, that, the less vitamin D that we're getting because the sunlight is less, or, especially as we're getting older, it's fearful. Nobody wants to fall. And so, if the sidewalks are icy, if there's snow on the ground, we've had a snowy and icy January so far. And I know that if folks are considering that, like when they're assessing whether or not to go out and kind of engage in that, sometimes it's just a lot easier just to stay home. And also if there are people that have certain personality disorders that make them have a precursor to kind of tending to keep to themselves, then there is more loneliness that we'll see within the mental health space.
Right. And what are things people can do if they are to overcome disconnection?
Oh, so some of the things that we talk about is even picking up the phone and talking to somebody. That seems, in a world of texting and messaging and emailing, it's so lost, just the idea of picking up the phone and calling somebody. Also, like writing handwritten notes back and forth, that's a nice way to connect with people. And I mean, there's always ways on social media, or even just, going out of your way to smile and say hello to your neighbor. You never know like what that will end up reading into. And finding places that you have the same interest, like for example, going to the library, and looking at books or taking out books or being interested in certain areas that for sure the library would be super helpful with. I mean, I always say like the senior center is one of the busiest and most energetic places in town. It's a great place to go and connect with people. And there's a lot of research that also shows how important it is for generations, like older generations connecting with younger generations. If there are any opportunities for that, I think even for folks that are busy with families or not feeling themselves to be lonely, I really would love all of us to, take a stance of wider eyes and, more open ears, just to see the people who aren't seen often in our community that are experiencing that loneliness, because sometimes it is just a matter of, offering a cup of coffee to somebody or saying like a nice hello and how are you today, and that kind of will help support, connection.
Right. Yeah. And what are 6 ways to achieve human connection?
So I would say making phone calls, reaching out to people via letters, meeting people at, programming such as the library or the senior center. The good thing about Zooms and things like that, they are getting a lot more accessible. And a lot more user friendly. So even setting up a Zoom, my daughter, she's 19, and she and her girlfriends, who are all over the place going to college right now, they set a weekly time where they all Zoom together.
Aww.
And I'm like, in the world of Snapchats and all of that, it's like their time that they dedicate an hour just for them to like get together over Zoom, and it seems like it serves their purpose, so they really enjoy it. So I wouldn't discount even something like a Zoom, a Zoom meeting, or like it doesn't even have to be like a Zoom meet and greet. And there's a lot of programs that are emerging across the country, really, I think because of what we've learned from the pandemic, how much more vulnerable people were in their homes, in isolation, and really trying to make sure that we re-engage those pathways, like those social connections that were either diminished or lost during 2020 and 2021.
Right. Yeah. And what are some things people can do with and for the elderly if they are homebound? I just even asking that question, right, of yourself, of what can I do a little bit more of? It does not have to be a large scale kind of thing, but even, when you recognize that perhaps your neighbor is not, able to get out of the house quite so much, even dropping off just a sentiment. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be ornate, but just a, hey, I'm thinking about you. This is, February is Shut-in Awareness Month. And so what we try to do with the health department is send notes to folks that we know are homebound, just to let them know that we're thinking about them. And I would love to do more in that realm of, even doing a monthly calls with folks, just to kind of, during the pandemic, we were calling people all the time and talking with them and following up on different things. And you realize how much people need that connection. And so really just encouraging us all to, look a little deeper at maybe some folks that are in your sphere, and consider ways just to be, just a little bit more kind. Mm-hmm. Exactly. We need more of that.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And during COVID, what did people do while they were shelter?
I think that a lot of people had the opportunity to explore like some different hobbies. I heard a lot of people were baking sourdough bread, which sounds great. I know a bunch of my friends started knitting. It's a nice time, I guess, to kind of explore what your interests are, or where it's an opportunity for sure. So if you could see it like that, but I don't, sometimes it's not that easy, especially if you're homebound for circumstances that you had no control over, whether it's from physically ailing or your transportation is no longer as independent as maybe it was before. But during the pandemic, I think people were also connecting over platforms like Zoom and FaceTime, and trying to work that out. I know that at the senior center they often they're very helpful in helping older folks set up technology or devices and things like that, so that they can connect with with, loved ones that maybe aren't here in person. And that, that seems like it's a great thing to do as well. I think and the library has computers. So there's a good amount of things in our community that can help support people.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a difference between loneliness and isolation?
Yeah, so loneliness is more of it's more of a feeling, whereas isolation is more of an environmental kind of characteristic. So like isolation, you are physically distanced from people. Loneliness, you can be in a large group of people and still feel very lonely, and you can feel, you could be in the middle of a concert and feel lonely because you're not connected with any of the people around you, or you could feel lonely. We see an increase of people reporting that they're lonely over the holidays, and they could be celebrating or partaking in some sort of celebration, but still feeling like they're lonelier than ever. And so, whereas isolation is a physical characteristic of distancing, isolation is more an emotional distancing for folks, and you can have one or the other, or they can coexist. But they doesn't mean that if there's isolation that somebody's definitely lonely.
Okay, that's good to know. Very interesting. Is there anything else that you would like to add that we didn't talk about?
No, I mean, I think really getting out there and talking more with each other, even though our society is so much more connected to each other, it feels like we have a harder time talking with each other than at each other. And so I do think that we, can do small gestures and maintain that level of, connection, because, it's social cohesion is definitely a protective factor when we're talking about our health and our well-being. So we want people to be more connected, and that doesn't mean in everybody's business, but we want folks to feel that they are, that they do have people to turn to, or that they do feel like there's some supports on either side of them. We even talk about this with emergency management, with folks that are, elders, because if people don't have family in the area or really close friends, we try to ask them, who is your number one support person? Like, who do you want, does somebody have a key to your home? Like that, if they needed to come, if there was a flood and somebody needed to come into your home and you're, isolated and you're homebound, does somebody have a key to your house? And, those are all things that we don't really consider until we have to consider them, and then sometimes that's a little bit too late, But one of the, the benefits of Winthrop has always been how close-knit the community is. I think that's more because it is kind of vulnerable to, forces outside of the community, meaning, climate and weather, and, we saw it today, like infrastructure, like, if there's a bad accident on a road that links us to Boston, the whole system kind of goes haywire. So, I think, folks that have lived in Winthrop for a long time and have, spent their lives here really are used to depending on their neighbors for everything. And so it's a beautiful network to build upon here, to be able to say, who are the folks within our community that might be a little bit more unseen, especially now that we've all emerged out of pandemic isolation, like who is still kind of hanging out in that area, and what can we collectively and cohesively do a little bit more to support them.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. If anyone would like to reach out and ask you any other questions that we didn't talk about, can you give us your contact info, please?
Sure. My email is the best, and we have new email addresses at the town, which is so much easier to say. So it's mhurley, Hurley, at winthropma.gov.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, but that's all the time that we have. Thank you for all you do for those in need. I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Please send them to lifeissuestv@gmail.com. And remember, live each day to the fullest and celebrate life. Hi, my name is Judie Vankooiman. I'm the founder and president of Those Who Can for Those in Need.
And I'm Sebastian Lemieux. I'm the treasurer.
We connect people and resources from the greater Boston and North Shore area.
We provide help with elderly, losing a loved one, children, low income, homelessness, mental illness, disease and health issues, substance abuse, domestic violence, LGBTQ, and veterans.
We are Winthrop based, but like we mentioned earlier, we cover a large area.
Our website is twctin.org, and on there you can find the various resources from the organizations that are with us, past episodes of Life Issues, which is a resource show, and our newsletters.
We hold 2 major events every year. We have our annual comedy show fundraiser in the spring, and early September we have our annual Family Resource Fair. For both events, please check out our website and social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
During our resource fair, our visitors will be able to visit the resource tables, there's food, and also various family activities.
To end, I started Those Who Can for Those in Need in memory of my husband, who passed away in 2007 of cancer. You can go on our website to learn more, twctin.org.
Thank you.